let me start by thanking the Jacobs Foundation for inviting me to be part of this wonderful event. It was fantastic to spend a day here at the symposium. I learned a lot about the other side of the research in which I am involved. I think that it's so fitting that Gesamte Schule Unterstrasse and Sarah Jane Blakemore are receiving the awards today. It's really important work, and I congratulate them for the accomplishments. They truly deserve this distinction. And if you want to understand what their work is about, I think that the natural question that you have to ask is, what can a person be? And a person can be as compassionate as Florence Nightingale, whose work in the 1850s not only saved lives, but also transformed the way the world perceives nurses. An individual can be as courageous as Nelson Mandela. Spending 27 years in jail was the price he was willing to pay to make progress toward racial equality. A human being can be as perseverant as Thomas Edison, who found out 1,000 ways not to make the light bulb. These are three individuals who are great and examples of the way that we can improve human welfare. Compassion, courage, perseverance, self-control, patience, friendliness, and modesty are some examples of what we economists call non-cognitive skills. Please forgive us, economists. We don't have very good abilities in naming anything, whether it's our pets, our children, or scientific terms. Over 2,000 years ago, Aristotle called them virtues and argued that they were necessary in order for a person to be whole and to live a meaningful and happy life. In my opinion, it's odd that most education systems in the world largely ignore this, the need to foster this complex dimension of human capital. It is a mistake that costs societies a lot of money, not only because they are important in determining the performance on marketable activities, but because they also affect how well we do things that are not in the market. And it's even more important because it's during the school years that we actually experience sensitive periods for the formation of these skills. In everyday language, sensitive periods are the periods in which you get the most bang for the buck. And it's not to the surprise of many people in this room that high-income parents actually spend a lot of time and resources to make sure that their children actually acquire those skills. And they do so by either paying for tuition and schools that provide the children with some form of experiential learning, or because they provide them with a home environment in which the children actually have the opportunity to learn these skills. A growing body of research in economics has documented that non-cognitive skills not only make us more productive in the labor market, they also influence our performance on more general social outcomes. My advisor conducted a research. He's also a Jacobs Foundation grantee. And that research showed that even very small changes in non-cognitive skills led to a reduction in crime rates by 10%. And this has large consequences for the United States expenditures on crime. According to the Brookings Institute, the United States annual expenditure on corrections is about $80 billion a year. That amount is roughly comparable to the Swiss GDP. Thus, just mild improvements in the stocks of non-cognitive skills can actually save the United States about $8 billion a year within the correction system alone. Although you may think that $8 billion is a large number, I would like to argue that it's actually an understatement of the true costs of not investing in non-cognitive skills. While some crimes are just a transfer from the victim to the criminal, other crimes actually lead to the destruction of human or material wealth. Research in the United States demonstrates that the cost of crime represents at least 2% of the GDP. Therefore, investments to foster non-cognitive skills would save the United States society at least $40 billion a year. That's half of the Swiss GDP. And I should remind you all that these cost savings relate exclusively to the reduction in crime. It does not include other benefits, such as the fact that non-cognitive skills increase the likelihood of enrolling in and graduating from college, of finding and keeping a job, and of getting paid higher hourly wages. It does not take into account the fact that the higher the non-cognitive skills, the lower the probability of experiencing an unwanted pregnancy, and the higher the chances of an individual investing more in the formation of academic and non-cognitive skills of his or her own future children. Tonight, we celebrate work that shows that it's cost-effective to foster non-cognitive skills during adolescence. In one of her most influential studies, Sarah Jane Blakemore showed that perspective taking substantially improves from early to late adolescence. Although adults tend to perform relatively better than adolescents on tests that measure perspective taking, research also shows that there is ample room for improvement in adults. This finding matters because individuals who score high on perspective taking are more likely to show empathy and sensitivity toward other human beings. Indeed, developing empathic skills is one of the goals of Gesamtschule Unterstrasse. So I have to quote Principal Dieter Hutman, who said, "Adolescents who teach and mentor younger children discover and develop executive and empathic skills." So it's extremely very well fitting to jointly celebrate Blakemore's path-breaking research with Gesamtschule Unterstrasse innovative approach to education. Similar findings have been discovered when it comes to other dimensions of non-cognitive skills. For example, research on future orientation and delay discounting by Lawrence Steinberg, the first person to actually win the Klaus Jacobs Research Prize, he's here in the room with us, shows that younger adolescents consistently demonstrate a weaker orientation to the future than individuals aged 16 and older. The younger adolescents show greater willingness to accept a smaller reward delivered sooner rather than a larger one that is delivered later. Thus, both impulse control and future planning seem to start developing from early to late adolescence and continue to develop until early adulthood. The findings from studies that rely on tests to measure non-cognitive skills agree with other research in neuroscience as well as research in economics. Imaging studies show that the part of the brain that supports some dimensions of non-cognitive skills, known as the prefrontal cortex, undergoes major transformation during adolescence. Moreover, the heterogeneity in development of this part of the brain is only partially driven by genes. In a fascinating study that compared MRI data from identical and same-sex fraternal twins, Caroline Brun showed that environmental influences were greater in frontal brain regions, much more so than other areas of the brain. Less than a decade ago, the leading model of human capital formation in economics assumed that human capital consisted of only academic skills. This model did not accommodate for the fact that skill formation may be subject to sensitive and critical periods of development. The findings from neuroscience and psychology have forced economists to change this view. Nowadays, the leading economic models of human capital formation contain many different types of skills and allow for these distinct dimensions of human capital to have their own specific critical and sensitive periods of development. Empirical works in economics using completely different data sets and methodologies from neuroscientists and developmental psychologists have used testable implications from these models to search for sensitive periods of development. The work suggests that there may be sensitive periods for the formation of certain basic cognitive skills at early stages of the life cycle, as well as sensitive periods for the development of these non-cognitive skills during adolescence. These findings have led economists to argue that investments in human capital need to start early on and continue through adulthood and adolescence. Research in economics is completely transformed by the prizes that we're giving today. But it also has concluded that heterogeneity in both academic and non-cognitive skills is produced by formal education as well as by the family environment that children and adolescents experience while growing up. This view is confirmed by studies in psychology that have shown that children whose parents follow an authoritative parenting style tend to have happier dispositions, good emotional control and regulation, and good social skills development. And they are more open to learning new skills as well. An authoritative parenting style is one in which parents want their children to utilize reasoning and work independently. When children break the rules, they are disciplined in a fair and consistent manner. Authoritative parents are also flexible, and they adjust responses according to extenuating circumstances. And they also have very high expectations for their children. In addition, other research in neuroscience has provided a deeper understanding of how much of skill formation is just natural development that all individuals more or less experience as they age, which should not be attributed to the environment, and other aspects which are not common across individuals as they age, and they can be driven by education, which then can be thought that they are driven by the environment. Kimberly Noble showed that heterogeneity in non-cognitive skills between two people that were the same age but had different amounts of education were accounted for by differences in the white matter tracts that support certain dimensions of non-cognitive skills. This finding is consistent with education affecting brain development and, in turn, forming non-cognitive skills. Things have come full circle. As the president of the Jacobs Foundation noted in her own remarks, Aristotle not only worried about the youth of his time, but he also advocated that they could become virtuous through education. Therefore, this large body of research shows that it's important for schools to abandon their narrow focus on academic skills and embrace the formation of non-cognitive skills, not only because they matter, but because it's cost-effective to invest in them while the individuals are in school. In some sense, schools have no choice because the experience of going to school can make individuals more compassionate towards their classmates, or it can make them a bully. The environment at school can allow students to embark on journeys of self-discovery, or it can make them succumb to peer pressure. And the schoolwork may provide the students with the opportunity to experience both failure and success, thus building perseverance, or it can be reduced to massive test preparation sessions that can just make them indifferent, weak, and lethargic. Some schools have already embraced this classic view of education, and the Jacobs Foundation is giving a prize exactly for these reasons. Other schools have adopted, at least partially, what is known as expeditionary learning. The report card in one such school not only includes documentation on how well the student performs on academic skills, for example, mathematics, language arts, history, natural science, but also includes records about the following: a student's sense of justice, his or her ability to state facts precisely, his or her ability to follow the right course of action in the face of hardships, discomfort, boredom, and impulses of the moment, his or her ability to plan, his or her imagination, his or her ability to deal with the unexpected, his or her degree of mental concentration, whether or not the task in question interests the student, his or her level of conscientiousness, whether in everyday affairs or in tasks with which the student is especially entrusted, the quality of his or her artwork, the quality of his practical work, such as handicraft, for example, his or her performance and effort in physical exercises, and many other dimensions of human capital. It's truly a small section that I'm just covering. In order to evaluate a student's performance on so many dimensions, this classical method requires students to be active participants in their education, not to simply remain seated and receive information. For example, students have to develop a year-long project, which can be fixing a car, writing a piece of music, conducting research, improving performance on a physical exercise, anything that is a refined target that can only be reached with patience and tenacity. Students are supposed to take long, silent walks so they can reflect on their progress and on their goals. Students go on camping expeditions where they face unexpected challenges that require them to help both others and themselves. In addition, students' own assessments about where they are, where they think they have succeeded, and where they think they have failed are just as important as teachers' assessments. And they use both assessments, together with feedback from parents and teachers, to design a plan on how to improve in areas that need improvement. They then write daily about whether or not they're sticking to the plan. Interestingly, in a voice recording from a public speaking event in New York City in the 1960s, Kurt Hahn, who not only founded the first expeditionary learning school in Germany, but also founded Outward Bound, he stated that all he had done was to implement ideas about education that were already known by the Greek philosophers from ancient times. Today, we can investigate how effective this classical system is in producing human capital. We should devote time and resources to answer this question in a very scientific way. This will not be easy because it will require us to follow children in both control and treatment groups for many years, even decades. It will be crucial to measure not only improvement in academic skills, but also in non-cognitive skills and outcomes such as crime participation, college enrollment and graduation, labor market attachment and performance, unwanted pregnancy, and other outcomes that can only be measured many years after these students have left schools. Ironically, researchers and policymakers will have to be themselves patient, perseverant, and courageous. Persistent, long-run economic growth, the kind of growth in which the economy grows, per capita income grows 2% every year, is something Homo sapiens have experienced only in the last 200 years of a history that already lasts almost 200,000 years. It's such a strong presence in our daily lives that we actually take it for granted, but we certainly should not. And the reason why is because many of the pressing and challenging issues that we're going to have to face ahead will require us to how to maintain this economic growth so that we can make sure that individuals who grow up and who are born and grow up in developing and poor countries can enjoy the same level of prosperity as individuals in the developed countries without provoking further damage to our natural environment. Economic theory and empirics suggest that human capital is the source of long-run economic growth because human capital creates new technologies, which in turn allows us to produce a lot more output using the same amounts of resources. The common belief is that inventors are the ones who have the most technical knowledge in a very specific area. In many cases, technical knowledge is neither necessary nor sufficient. Whether inventors, whether in science, arts, or business, need to have perseverance and the courage to try something new, even knowing that they will fail many times. They have to be tolerant and open to new ideas and to criticism, and they must know how to lead large teams of their peers. I could substantiate this claim by citing relevant research in economics or in sociology. However, to convince yourself that this truth is self-evident, you just need to reflect on Klaus Jacob's many accomplishments, including the fact that it is because of his altruism that we are all here together tonight celebrating research on the importance of investments in non-cognitive skills. Florence Nightingale, Nelson Mandela, Thomas Edison, Klaus Jacobs were truly exceptional human beings. Do not think that I'm trying to convince you that we can all be like them. We can't. My point is that we need to equip our youth with non-cognitive skills so they will have the necessary tools to be economically productive, to pursue happiness, and to find meaning. Therefore, we should build an educational system that not only teaches our youth math, language, history, geography, and science, but also encourages them to embark on journeys of self-discovery in which they can find their true passion. Our educational system should provide them with the opportunity to help others so they can build altruism, empathy, and sensitivity towards their peers. And the educational system should also allow the students to absorb themselves in long-term projects so they can find the strength to carry on when difficulties arise. We need to foster these non-cognitive skills because they are the substance from which our heroes are made. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Flávio.